Morning, guys. Hope we're well.
Thank you.
My biggest issue for this with Gerrard is I get the players going there in certain amounts and the points of their career. But let's say, for example, you're Steven Gerrard. You have failed at Aston Villa. You've gone to the Saudi League. This club have finished 7th, 35 points behind. Let's say you take them 2nd or 3rd in your next 2 seasons and then a Premier League job comes up. You go for that interview in the Premier League job and let's say it is at a mid-table size. And you walk in there and say, well, I've been on 30 million a year in the Saudi Pro League. That's what I think I'm worth now. No Premier League side is going to be able to offer him that amount of money when he comes back. And your life is going to adjust to earning that sort of money and earning it tax-free. And you come back to the UK, in Saudi Arabia, he's going to have to probably turn up, do some press conferences, do some of all of the pretty stuff. If he comes back to a mid-table Premier League side, he is going to have to graft. He's going to have to work. He's going to have to win games. And his shelf life could be anything between 6 and 12 months. Why are you going to give up 25 to 30 million a year to come back to the Premier League or even the Championship for under 10 times the amount of pressure you were for probably a fraction of the money? It makes absolutely no sense in my view.
Do you know what? You've made some very good points, Jay. Where do you think this stops, or does it stop?
I mean, I think that what it does is it starts to overinflate. And I made this point we were talking about player contracts before, and I said about Saka, he's gone to 320 grand a week now. And I'm an Arsenal fan, and I think that is amazing value. That's him at 23. And say, for example, his career, the trajectory continues, and he keeps getting better and better and better over the next 3 years of his contract. What's his next contract going to be? 550, 600,000 a week? And there is only one place in the world that can actually afford those wages and not really worry about financial fair play, balancing the books. So it's almost like the player salaries are now going to start to ramp up. And you're going to get top players who believe they're going to be worth £600,000 a week. There's only one place on planet Earth they're going to be able to go and play their football.
Jay, many good points here. I totally get what you're saying, Jay. Some good points here. I mean, Simon, Jay's got a point, has he? He's got many points in there. Yeah. But after that, what do you really need to do?
Well, this is address the point he's made about Steven Gerrard and the earning capacity of going to Saudi. You know, not everything that you make in life is a linear upward direction. Sometimes if you own a hedge fund, sometimes you have good years and sometimes you have bad years. If Steven Gerrard is looking at the picture of a football decision, which I don't believe this is, but let's give him a bit of latitude and say it is, he'll price in the fact that he can go and earn a lot of money in Saudi and look at the bigger picture of being able to get himself back into English football, accept the reality of getting less. But the price on a ticket will be, I go to Saudi, I can re-establish my reputation if that's his perspective. I can earn 50 million quid for doing it. Yes, I'll come back to the Premier League and maybe get 5 or 6 million quid. He's not going to walk back to the Premier League and say, because I've earned 25 million in Saudi, I expect to get paid 25 million in the Premier League, because there aren't any managers in the Premier League that are currently getting paid that. He'll price that into his thinking. But it isn't a football decision, it's a financial decision. As far as Jay making the point that what are these players going to get to? If Jay thinks that £320,000 a week is a reasonable starting point, then we're already departing.
Yes.
Because the genie's already out of the bottle. You're already at £16 million a year for a bleeding footballer, right? You're already at that point. So if you can go to 16, you can go to 20. If you can go to 20, you can go to 22. So you're already in that ballpark.
Right,
and of course, if you're getting into squad capping and the revenue that football clubs are generating of 500 million quid, these salaries can be priced in. You can get players getting paid £25 million a year, and some of them getting paid 5 and some of them getting paid 8, and come out with a £350 million wage bill on a £500 million a year turnover and still meet the compliance of financial fair play. The challenge is if it keeps on raising with Saudi money, where does it stop and where does it get to? And do we want this kind of influence? Do we want this kind of outlook? Because Saudi and its right to be able to participate in sport is one thing, but these are not sports plays. Despite we can sit there with Hassan Al-Thawadi and all his gang of people, with due respect to Nasser, and say it's for the love of sport. But it isn't. That means the metrics of sport are being utilised to advance something else, which means every sports league around the world that's purely playing sport for sports benefit with economic returns attached to it are now in a compromised position.
But at some point, does this become a viable sporting project?
Well, again, the answer is how many good players are you going to get in? They're getting a splattering of good players, whether it is Franz Beckenbauer or Paul Breitner or Rodney Marsh or Georgie Best going into the American League in the 70s didn't make them successful, didn't make them have good competitive football. They're going to have to do a lot of yardage. They've got 16 teams in that league. They're going to need to have more than 1 or 2 top players from around the world coming into each of those teams to be able to make themselves competitive. I would watch the space in the FIFA World Club Championship, because that's, I think, where they'll start to go with thinking to themselves, right, they're not going to buy the Champions League, they're not going to buy the FA, they're not going to buy the Premier League.
No, but they want a World Cup finals in 2030.
But they've had one, so there's no reason why they shouldn't have one, unless there's
Qatar have had one, but Saudi haven't.
Fine,
that's the aim.
But the Middle Eastern
and they don't like each other.
The Middle Eastern region has no difference or no less right to be able to have World Cups than North America that's had it a few times, European opportunities. If we find undue influence finding its way into FIFA, which is not a difficult find, quite frankly, because we've seen it there previously, then we have to question it. But when we start getting domestic football, international football World Cup tournaments are one thing. When we start seeing the domestic landscape changing, and I think they're an angle of attack to get Middle Eastern football on the world stage, is start to want to compete in the FIFA World Club Championships. So all of a sudden you've got a Middle Eastern team competing alongside the champions of England, the champions of South America, or whoever else plays in these FIFA World Club Championships. That's where I think their pathway will be.
Yeah. Sooner or later, though, will you start watching the Saudi Pro League if it's on the box here? Because so many people we will recognise and know who are taking part in it.
Well, yeah, I mean, look, that's all about access and availability.
You'll probably end up watching it because stories will emerge out of it.
But that's all about access and availability, right? Now, if our little mates over at Sky that spend their entire life giving us a lecture about anti-discrimination campaigns start doing deals with broadcasters in Saudi Arabia, which, by the way, they will, and the hypocrisy will know no length, we'll start to see access bringing that sort of product to us. Now, with that in mind, we will all, like watching a Doctor Who, sitting behind the couch, leaning over the top when the Daleks came on, look at something that we don't like, and watch it develop, right, and see if it frightens us or not. If the quality is good, then we'll watch it, won't we, in the same way that we watch Italian football, Spanish football. But they are going to take a long time to build this to anything resembling what we consider to be high-end football.
Well, you say that. You say that, Simon.
It's my belief.
But how long will it take? Because some of the star names are already there and others are following. Ronaldo's there, Benzema's there.
But they're not going there for genuine reasons.
Kante's there.
But the thing is, Jim, they're not going there for genuine reasons.
Right.
Now, the motivation...
Doesn't matter, they're still going to be playing.
To a point. The motivation of a player coming into the Premier League is because they want to be an elite footballer.
Right.
And they want to be at the top of their trade, and they're competing against other elite footballers, and the prize is to be the best in their trade.
Yeah.
The prize in Saudi Arabia is to be the biggest paid. There is a difference in motivation. There is a difference in outcomes. If you go to one place solely for money, all it will ever be about is money for you.
Okay, well, we know who's out there and we know who's following. Steven Gerrard's on a plane and he's heading out there now to carry on his managerial career. Jota of Celtic said goodbye to the East End of Glasgow. He's going to Al-Ettifaq for 25 million quid. And we know that Ruben Neves is already there. So they're heading out there almost on a daily basis. The Saudi Pro League, if it's on a channel that you can watch back here, will you watch it? Are you prepared to get into it? 03717 223344 81089.
Jim White and Simon Jordan. Monday to Friday mornings from 10 on AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.